Supply chain lessons from the baby formula debacle. Protectionism builds weaknesses into supply chains. This was demonstrated vividly by the baby formula shortage, which may have peaked in 2022, but remains an ongoing concern. Domestic baby formula producers benefit from a decades-old tariff that averages 17%, which is effectively high enough to shut imports out of the market. As if tariffs were not enough, other requirements also help to keep competition out of the market. Ever-evolving labeling requirements and nutritional standards that, conveniently for domestic manufacturers, are always just slightly different from international standards. As a result, before the formula shortage in 2022, approximately 98% of the country's baby formula was produced domestically. With foreign competition out of the way, other government policies helped to concentrate almost the entire domestic formula industry into 4 firms. Roughly 40% of baby formula purchases are made by state-level food. I'm sorry, my alarm just went off. Sorry about that. With foreign competition out of the way, other government policies helped to concentrate almost the entire domestic formula industry into 4 firms. Roughly 40% of baby formula purchases are made by state-level food assistance programs, which typically do not let families choose their own formula brands. Instead, they must buy from a single producer, which guarantees producer large market shares in states where they win contracts. This situation gives incumbent producers a cozy existence, but puts consumers at risk. Like all protectionist policies, the benefits are concentrated in the hands of a few producers, while the costs and risks are widely distributed. With so many eggs in so few baskets, whenever something goes wrong, which is inevitable, even when nobody is at fault, families find themselves scrambling. That happened early in 2022 when contamination entered a Michigan facility that makes about 40% of America's baby formula. Trade protectionism all but eliminated other options for many parents who suddenly found empty shelves and sky-high prices for an essential item that many of them were already struggling to afford, while families in other countries were unaffected. In response, Congress passed the Formula Act in the summer of 2022. The act eased formula tariffs and loosened never-needed labeling requirements and other import restrictions, but it was temporary. It expired at the end of 2022, leaving families still vulnerable to the cascading consequences that ensue if one thing goes wrong at only one plant. The baby formula debacle has 2 lessons for the next administration. The administration needs to attack the root of the problem. Temporary fix-it bills are better than nothing, but they leave the rot in place. The president needs to encourage bold liberalization. Strength comes from openness. In the real world, markets fail. Factories will get contaminated, and health inspectors will not always be as thorough as they should be. The baby formula market is essentially a natural experiment in self-sufficient industry policy. When something went wrong, that single failure point crashed the whole system. It should not be that way, and the next president can change it. Part of the problem is that the supply chain analogy itself causes sloppy thinking. In a chain, a link is connected only to the link ahead of it and the link behind it, and not to any other links. Real-world supply chains are more like networks in which each point connects directly to countless others and is rarely more than 6 degrees of separation from nearly anywhere on Earth. Because market failures happen all the time, it is important to have as many connections as possible. Americans need access to more ways to adapt and reroute around failure points, especially for essential products like baby formula. Trade protectionism makes us more vulnerable, but free trade makes our families and communities more resilient. Loosening restrictions similar to the ones that stunt the baby formula market would make it easier to navigate future crises while preventing the progressive and rent-seeking power grabs that come with every crisis, whether it is as isolated as a baby formula shortage or as expansive as a pandemic. Mutual recognition. A simple way to reduce friction in supply networks is mutual recognition of other industrialized countries' regulatory standards. This can be done either in a larger trade agreement or independently. For baby formula, this would mean allowing in brands that meet European Union standards, even if they do not meet Food and Drug Administration labeling requirements. Infants' nutritional needs do not change across borders. If a formula is deemed healthy for European babies, then it is also healthy for American babies. The reverse is equally true. Mutual recognition could help to open new markets for American producers in countless industries and give American producers access to countless new products on more competitive terms. For example, US regulations require washing machine power cords to be at least 6 feet long, while the UK requires them to be at least 2 meters. The difference, about 6 inches, affects neither safety nor performance, but it does keep American-made washing machines out of an important foreign market. A mutual recognition policy would circumvent the problem. Given the recent interest in increased antitrust enforcement, conservatives should embrace policies like mutual recognition that have the double benefit of increasing market competition while decreasing government's regulatory footprint. The U.S. should enact mutual recognition agreements for a wide variety of goods with the United Kingdom, European Union, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and other governments with high standards compared to our own. This would have especially large benefits for pharmaceuticals because America's FDA drug approval process is both slower and more expensive than those of other countries without being any safer. Americans would gain access to more and lower cost medical treatments, and American pharmaceutical companies could defray development costs and innovate faster by gaining access to more markets, all while cutting prices. The Jones Act. The Jones Act Merchant Marine Act of 1920 requires that ships traveling between U.S. ports must be U.S. built, U.S. owned, and U.S. crewed. In practice, this is an America Last policy that has decimated the American maritime industry. Because of Jones Act regulations, American-built ships cost 3 to 4 times more to build than foreign-built ships cost. As a result, the entire Jones Act fleet is down to just 92 ships, many of which are old and obsolete. In fact, Jones Act compliant shipping is so expensive that it is often cheaper for East Coast ports to import oil from Vladimir Putin's Russia than it is to set. Okay, let me read that. As a result, the entire Jones Act fleet is down to just 92 ships, many of which are old and obsolete. In fact, Jones Act compliant shipping is so expensive that it is often cheaper for East Coast ports to import oil from Vladimir Putin's Russia than it is to send up the coast from Houston or New Orleans. The national security, to say nothing of energy security, implications of reliance on Russia for oil and gas are obvious. The Jones Act original national security justifications are just as dubious. The Act's goal was to guarantee a sizable fleet of American ships that could be pressed into war service if needed. Aircraft carriers and other post-1920 naval innovations have made this argument obsolete. An $800 billion defense budget has plenty of room to maintain the Navy. Let me read that again. An $800 billion defense budget has plenty of room to maintain a Navy to defend American security interests around the world. The U.S. Navy would likely prefer not to use Jones Act ships anyway, because they tend to be older and in poorer condition than its own ships or similar foreign-made but domestically owned commercial ships that could also be pressed into service. As with many other industries, U.S. shipbuilding could be the envy of the world if it could operate in a free market. But the maritime lobby prefers a quiet, cozy existence on the dole, even as it harms American consumers and national security. The next conservative administration should unleash American potential by unilaterally enacting Jones Act exemptions wherever allowed, as currently happens most years during hurricane season, and working with Congress to repeal the Jones Act.
Great. Thank you so much. Do you have anything to say, to comment on what you read, or do you want to comment overall on Project 2025?
I'm glad what you're doing. I've been reading through some of this, and it's yeah. All I want to say is it's jarring to read some of what they're up to, and I appreciate. Now, this was technical for me. That's what I read, but I enjoy that you're getting the word out on what Project 2025 is about. So thank you.